if you're not delivering that delight on a daily basis to your customers, they're going to stop using the service and they're going to churn. If you take that same approach internally, you're going to have people that want to use the processes and the setups and the data and the so on that you work with. My role and the role of my team in sales operations essentially is to help sales people and the sales teams to sell more, win more business, and to help an organization improve their renewal rates as well. So I look at two main points: increase new sales, upsales, and improve the renewal rate. So whatever drives revenue, if I can help, I will make sure that we can do that. How has my life impacted that philosophy? So my background is in sales and sales leadership before sort of switching into the sales operations, or more operational function. So I always put my hat as a salesperson or as a sales leader when I engage in conversations in the organization. And if I was a salesperson, how would I work with this? If I was a sales leader, how would I work with this? What do I need? Based on my experience. And then obviously that gives me, I think, a solid foundation when I'm having and solid foundation, and also a certain not trustworthiness, but I'm trying to see it from the same eyes as the people that I'm speaking with, and I think that can take things quite far. We have a common understanding on a number of problems already from the get-go.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. This is really important, and this is one of the reasons I was really excited to speak to you. Obviously, ops partnering with sales effectively is really important. So from your time from being a salesperson, sales leader, what really helped you and get on board with data? What characteristics did ops teams have that works really well with sales from your perspective of a rep and former leader yourself?
I'm trying to break it down into 3 bullets, but I think simplicity in the processes, in the tools. So make it easy to use, make it user friendly, make it delightful, so that sales leaders want to work with the processes, as opposed to setting some fairly rigid processes that look good on paper, but that when you put them into practice, they fall sort of fairly quickly in the process. So simplicity and ease of use, I think, is one key element when you're talking about the CRM ecosystem, because that's where you are putting in a lot of information. That's where you have a lot of processes that you're trying to communicate or get the rest of the organization to work with. Then from a data point of view, I think it's data quality. And data quality and data simplicity. So don't ask too much information if you don't know how you're going to use it, right? So we need these fields. Why do you need these fields, for example, and how we're going to work with it? If there's not a really good answer to that, you probably don't need a field. You're probably asking for something else. And then let's dig into that something else and then find a good solution to it. But I think one of the key things is also data quality, so that when you're working in your ecosystem, that the reports that you pull, the analytics that you derive, can be actually trusted without too much digging into it. And then your decisions obviously are going to be better founded. I can't think of a third point right now. I usually like to break it into 3s, but simplicity, data accuracy, and sort of processes that people want to work with, in short.
Yeah, okay, and you had a brilliant phrase there: to make your processes delightful. Fantastic. So when we get onto
that's what you preach to the customers, right? Sorry if I just, like, when you're selling a SaaS service to the customers, it's like, look how easy it is. So you look how much value you get, and And if they don't like it at the end of it, you could have a great pitch, but when they're working with it, that's where customer success comes in. If you're not delivering that delight on a daily basis to your customers, they're going to stop using the service and they're going to churn. If you don't do that, if you take that same approach internally, you're going to have people that want to use with the processes and the setups and the data and the so on that you work with. So it's taking that SaaS mindset, customer success mindset internally in the organization.
Yes. Okay. Absolutely on board with this. So when we do look at your processes and we're thinking about successful long-term adoption, what's the groundwork required to begin that successful adoption when a new process has been designed or rolled out? How do we break this down into something actionable?
I think it starts with the, and again, this comes back to the theme, adopting new processes. It's the whys. Very much it's your standard, again, going into a sales process, the why, the how, the what, the who, and engaging. We need an approval process, or we need to improve the way we manage renewals, or we need to forecast more accurately. Okay, what is the problem that we're facing together, and speak to the different people, the different stakeholders that are engaged, and get their input to get a broader understanding of the challenge. So this is not brain surgery or anything, but it's what you would apply in a sales process as well. What are the challenges? Who's involved? Who do I need to engage with? And then based on that, sort of design a solution, an initial solution, test that with the people that would be involved, make them go through the use case scenarios, and then refine along the way as well. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how my usual approach is. Understand the problem from different angles, use the experience that I have and the input that I'm getting, come up with a solution, engage people in the review of my interpretation, because it always comes down to an interpretation of the challenge that is being presented or the process that needs to be implemented. Did I understand? Will this do what you want it to? Yes. And then release these processes and then follow up for the coming period of time, at least, especially at the beginning, you need to follow up quite a lot. How are you working with this? The same people that you work with, how are you working with this? Engage new people. How have they interpreted it? Because they maybe didn't sit in on the onboarding session that is held for these new processes. So is it clear? Yeah, but this doesn't work. Okay, tweak until you get to that level where people understand it and people want to work with it. And usually when you do that, then you will have your early adopters that speak to the detractors. The detractors come back to you for questions. You engage with them. You give them the attention that they need for them to understand. And then hopefully in the future, they will be delighted. And I think we launched, just thinking of a previous experience where we launched Salesforce we didn't have it. And then we launched the platform in the organization. And I had a few early adopters, and they kind of stayed throughout the level. But then there was the more critical ones at the beginning. And they provided some really good input, why they were against it and how does it impact? And constantly sort of, yeah, but if you work like this, or if you think of these processes, how do you do it today? This is how I think you could do it. And then slowly but surely at the end, sort of after a year's time, these people were very, very, very happy. So it's fun to see that journey when working on these types of processes, essentially. And you can put that across any type of process, whether it's approvals, whether it's forecasting, meeting cadences, what have you. If you ask the right questions and follow up afterwards and make sure you have the support in the organization, I think it's necessary. I think the support in the organization is key as well. So sorry for rambling, but that's yeah.
Don't apologize. I think that's fantastic. So we can win over folks who are skeptical by bringing them involved actively in how the process is being designed and support them in the period of transition.
Yeah, I think the support in the period of transition is key, because if you believe in your processes, if you believe in what you've done, you can eventually win over even the most hardened sort of detractors. If you have their interests at heart. Again, I think I'm thinking of approvals right now because that's something that we did recently, and it's something it adds a layer of in the organization, in the process. Yes, but think of the benefits of it. And if we work together on it, at the end, when we're ready to send the document for signature, we can move very quickly. And you want us to move very quickly as a salesperson. So that's why we have this process, so that when it matters, we can act.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Earlier you used an example of a process being like an internal cell. And if we've run with that analogy, because I really like it, one thing sales folks will do is spot risk in their deals and spot prospects or clients who perhaps might not be that engaged. So if we're talking about running a process and rolling out a process, what are some of the key tells that actually your sales leadership, whoever it is, just aren't engaging? And at what point do we actually perhaps consider whether we massively iterate or stop rolling out this new process? Like, what's some of the key signals, tells, things you'll be seeing on the ground to give you an indication that you don't have that kind of buy-in?
Okay, so you're bringing the analogy of a sales process where if you're running an opportunity, you will get those telltale signs that okay, let's move away from this opportunity and focus on something else. I think for me, it would be the leadership engagement. So I find processes that are driven from the top very often have a stronger likelihood of being successful, because it's almost mandated, it's sponsored, we're gonna do this. There's a reason why we're gonna do this, and I think it's clear to communicate the reason why. But if I see that the support from the top for these initiatives is reducing, then it's not as important, really. So it's the same thing in the sales process. If you're not accessing the economic buyer or the decision maker and you're not getting a return on that, then that deal is probably not that important. So that process is probably not that important anymore. And there might be some other things that are more important that require more attention. And that's when you have an open dialogue about it and say, if we're going to be successful in this, then we need to do this, that, and the other. Are we on board? Is this still relevant or not? Should we shift focus? Because it's okay to shift focus if the focus has shifted, but as long as everybody involved understands that as well. So I think that would be my telltale sign that something is still important or less important.
Okay, great. Okay. So what you're saying there, a big part of perhaps convincing or showing evidence or showing why something's important is going to be data. So how does data come into things for you, Gabriel? And how does tooling come into things for you as well on that piece?
How does data come in? Data's fun, and data, if you set it up properly, I think, where does data come in? How should I say? You need the proper infrastructure to be able to gather the right data at the right point in time. You need to understand what are the metrics that you want to be measuring. First, I think that's one element, and then how do I gather those metrics, and how can I do it in an easier way? Always, can I make it easier? Can I make it easier? Because if there's one thing that's annoying, is spending a lot of time trying to gather data to then make sense of it. So understanding the metrics, having access, and I can give an example of the difference for me in terms of understanding the metrics, but getting access to the data, and then the last point so that you can work with it. And then the last point is trust in the data. Do we have the checks and balances in place in our systems to ensure that when we do pull out the data, it's relevant. When it comes to understanding the metrics, for me, it's having worked in both more enterprise type SaaS companies where you have fewer deals that are worth a lot. There, it's it's difficult to base analytics on just volume of data. You really need to go and quantify that information and dig into the details. Whereas when you work with a more higher volume, more transactionally based, from a forecasting point of view, for example, I'm just thinking, then it's the volume can tell a lot. So how big is my pipeline and how many new opportunities are being created and so on and so forth. You can tell a lot more without diving into the details based on that volume. It's almost going into the B2C versus B2C mindset. Yeah. So, and then, coming back to having your checks and balances and process to make sure that your data is clean, I think is good. And then there are great tools for that. I'm working in Salesforce for 12 years and understand what are some of the add-ons that you can bring in to help maintain that data, to trigger process builders, to trigger workflows, so that you have updates in the evening, so that the next day when you come in, it's your processes have run, and then having your, what I call data hygiene or maintenance reports that shows you illogicalities. So if this happens, it should never be, if this field is like this, it should never be like that. Pulling out reports where these events do occur, and then fixing those as you go on a weekly or monthly basis helps build that trust in the organization, which is something I mentioned. If you build that trust, then you can get some pretty cool stuff on the flip side of it.
Yes. I'm sure plenty of folks at Ops are probably jealous at the hygiene of your CRM. It sounds like you've got a really good process around data hygiene there, which is great.
But I learned this through these, so hopefully I can inspire somebody. But it's when I first started Sales Ops, I jumped in on some webinar and I heard somebody talk about hygiene reports, and I dug into it a little bit, and it made sense. And then we went from not trusting our marketing automation, but when a new customer onboards, are we sending the right email out, to at the end actually having some really great processes where the next day that a customer signed a contract, they got these automated emails, there were no errors, we weren't sending it to the wrong people at the wrong time and stuff like that. So you can, as this comes out, you can do a lot of cool stuff once you have that in place.
Awesome. Okay, final question for you, Gabriel, then. If you're in a room full of sales ops experts, maybe the best people to ever do it, what would you ask them?
What I'm interested in now, it would be, how do you set up your cadence and your team in sales operations? So from a cadence, I mean, what are the things that sales operations, your organization, does on a daily, weekly, quarterly, monthly, annual basis? And how do you work with those? What are the tasks and how do you split it up? And then how do you set up your team? What type of resources do you have in your team? Those are things that I find interesting right now. I don't think there's a silver bullet answer, but it's something that I like to discuss when speaking with other sales ops professionals. That may change in 6 months, but that's where I am right now.